Hello, everyone, and welcome to a reading and analysis of William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Today, we're going to take a look at Act 2, Scene 2. And before we get started, a real quick kind of interesting story. I was pretty sure this was the longest scene of the play, and I just Googled it to see if it was. And I don't know if this will come up on the camera, but if you look at the... there we go. If you look at the AI search results that came up, it claims that Act 1, Scene 2 is the longest of the play. And that's pretty interesting because it's not correct. But I spelled what's wrong. I didn't put the apostrophe in. And if you click on did you mean, the proper spelling of the results, the AI overview that comes up is in fact correct. So perhaps generative AI is only trying if you can spell correctly, which is bad for me because I'm not great at spelling. But perhaps the biggest takeaway from this is that it's a good thing we're here using our human brains. And maybe I'm being too critical of AI, but if they're going to, use my videos to train without compensation or permission, I get to point out their faults. Point of all of this is that 2-2 is a very, very long scene, about 650-ish lines. 1-2 is 250 for the record. So, fellow Shakespearean scholars, lean in, grab something to write with, like field notes, and let's tackle one of the best scenes in the whole play. All right, 2-2 starts with meeting some new characters. The king and queen are talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and those are kind of two particularly long names, and I think that's part of the joke. Welcome, dear Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Moreover, that we much did long to see you. The need we have to use you did provoke our hasty sending. Something have you heard of Hamlet's transformation, so call it? Sith nor the exterior nor the inward man resembles that it was. Sith nor the exterior means since neither the exterior nor the inward man resembles what it was. So Hamlet's transformation is, of course, his antic disposition. So we've seen more offstage action. Ophelia met with Polonius and told him about Hamlet's crazy behavior, and they said they're going to go meet with the king. We didn't have to see that part because you can infer how that would have looked. So now we see the king making the next move, which is to call in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So these are two people who know Hamlet. We'll figure out exactly how in just a little bit here. What should it be more than his father's death that thus hath put him so much from the understanding of himself I cannot dream of? So what beyond the death of his father could be bothering him so much? I have no idea. Maybe that I married his mom. I don't know. But he's not considering that, I guess. I entreat you both that being of so young days brought up with him, and sith so neighbored to his youth and haver that you vouchsafe your rest here. Vouchsafe your rest here means stay here for a while. In our court some little time. So by your companies to draw him on to pleasure, and to gather so much as from occasion you may glean. Whether aught to us unknown afflicts him thus, that opened lies within our remedy. So did you catch how Rosencrantz and Guildenstern know Hamlet? They are childhood friends. So they have been recruited by the royal court, by Claudius, specifically to hang out with Hamlet, spend time with him, try and figure out what is bothering him so much, and tell the royal court, the king and queen, what that is, which is a really nice way of saying spy on him. But I talked about the layers of surveillance in this play. There you have another layer being added. Gertrude follows up with, good gentleman, he hath much talked of you, and sure I am two men there is not living to whom he more adheres. If it will please you to show us so much gentry and goodwill as to expend your time with us a while for the supply and profit of our hope, your visitation shall receive such thanks as fits a king's remembrance. Meaning, if you're here, we'll treat you very well, and if you figure out what's wrong with him, the king will remember it, and, there will be big thanks for that. Now, Rosencrantz points out an interesting little distinction about this very pleasant way that Claudius and Gertrude are talking to them. He says, both your majesties might by the sovereign power because they're kings and queens, you have of us put your dread pleasures more into command than to entreaty. So entreaty is like an earnest request. It's hard to say that word, earnest request. Whereas command is like, you have to do this. So they are making an earnest request the way they're speaking. But because they are the king and queen, do Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have any option of saying no? Probably not. And Rosencrantz seems to pick up on that and say, like, well, why don't you just command us to do it? And Guildenstern shuts him up and says, but we both obey, and here give up ourselves in full bent to lay our service freely at your feet to be commanded. Thanks, Rosencrantz and gentle Guildenstern. Thanks, Guildenstern and gentle Rosencrantz, which is very funny because these characters are easily mixed up. Sometimes they're played by one actor and they're combined in more abridged versions of the play. Like, people keep mixing them up. So you see it right there. And I beseech you instantly to visit my too much changed son. Go, some of you, and bring these gentlemen where Hamlet is. Heavens make our presence and our practices pleasant and helpful to him. Aye, amen. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern exit with some attendants. So there we have it. The friends have been brought to court. Pretty much have to go through with this, even though it was all very pleasant. And thanks for doing us this favor. It is really an espionage mission. They have to spy on Hamlet, report back to the king what they figure out. What is bothering him? Enter Polonius. The ambassadors from Norway, my good lord, are joyfully returned. So that is Voltimand and Cornelius, who went to Norway in 1-2. So you might even have forgotten that there was a potential war with Norway looming, because there's so much stuff happening within the court itself that we kind of forget the foreign affairs happening. Thou hast been the father of good news. Have I, my lord? I assure my good liege, I hold my duty as I hold my soul, both to my God and to my gracious king. And I do think, or else this brain of mine hunts not the trail of policy so sure it hath used to do, that I have found the very cause of Hamlet's lunacy. So Polonius has a lot of good news, and he is always kissing up to the king and queen, especially the king. And in that long-winded way, he says, I think I figured out why Hamlet has lost his mind. This is, of course, really good news for the king and queen to hear. So they say, oh, speak of that do I long to hear. Give first admittance to the ambassadors. My news shall be the fruit to that great feast. Fruit there meaning dessert. They're healthier back then, dietarily wise, I guess. So, some of you might eat fruit for dessert. If you do, good for you. What is being set up here is a pretty funny joke, in my opinion. They're like, Polonius, tell us what is causing Hamlet to be insane. He's like, oh, listen to them first. I'll follow up after. Remember that as we keep going. Thyself do grace to them and bring them in. Polonius exits. He tells me, my dear Gertrude, he hath found the head and source of all your son's distemper. I doubt it is no other but the main, his father's death, and our o'er hasty marriage. Well, we shall sift him. Enter ambassadors, Voltimand and Cornelius with Polonius. Welcome, my good friends, say Voltimand, what from our brother Norway? Most fair return of greetings and desires. Upon our first, he sent out to suppress his nephew's levies, which to him appeared to be a preparation against the Pollock, but better looked into, he truly found it was against your highness. So basically, after the ambassadors went, young Fortinbras had said he was going to attack Poland, but now that it's been looked into, it looked like he was actually going to attack Denmark. Whereat, grieved that so his sickness, age, and impotence was falsely borne in hand, sends out arrests on Fortinbras, which he, in brief, obeys, receives rebuke from Norway, king of Norway, and, in fine, makes vow before his uncle nevermore to give the assay of arms against your majesty. Whereon old Norway, overcome with joy, gives him 70,000 crowns in annual fee, and is commissioned to employ those soldiers so levied as before against the Pollock, with an entreaty therein further shown. He gives a paper. That it might please you to give quiet pass through your dominions for this enterprise, on such regards of safety and allowance as therein are set down. So let's just talk about the politics here a little bit. The ambassadors point out to the king of Norway that in his old age, and sickness and impotence, apparently. He has been blinded to the fact that his nephew is raising an army not to attack Poland, but to attack Denmark, which apparently is a bigger deal to the King of Norway. So what does the King of Norway do? He decides that he will send out like arrest warrant for his nephew, bring him to court. His nephew admits that he was going to attack Denmark, and Norway decides, okay, now that you've promised that you won't attack Denmark, you can still attack Poland. Would you like to go through Denmark to get to Poland? And that is what they are requesting of Claudius. So think about that. An army that was at one point going to attack you is now saying, we promise we're not going to do that. We're just wondering if we could like come into your country for a little bit so we could pass through and attack Poland. And look what Claudius says. He says, it likes us well. And at our more considered time, we'll read, answer, and think upon this business. So he's like, oh yeah, it sounds great. I'll think about it at a different time and consider it a little bit. It's like, this should be the main thing, right? Like war is at the doorstep trying to pass through the living room of the nation. And Claudius is like, okay, sure. And he's speeding it along, which is good for us because we get to the drama we care about, which is the domestic drama of the royal family. But it is kind of showing how when petty infighting and betrayal and secrecy runs the government, how that government is too distracted to be a good government. So anyway, meantime, we thank you for your well-took labor. Go to rest. At night we'll feast together. Most welcome home. Voltman Cornelius, exit. This business is well ended, my liege and madam, to expostulate what majesty should be, what duty is, why day is day, night, night, and time is time, were nothing but to waste night, day, and time. Therefore, since brevity is the soul of wit, and tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, I will be brief. So we have this big long windup. First off, Polonius is like, no, they need to go first. And now we get this big long windup where he talks about how day is day, night is night, time is time, and nothing but waste night, day, and time. It's like ridiculous. It's meant to be ridiculous. So if you're like, I don't get what's happening, that's part of the joke. Polonius is just talking to talk. And in that speech where he's just talking to talk, he has one of his most famous lines, which is brevity is the soul of wit, which you'll hear quoted. Polonius gets quoted out of context all the time. People say, to thine own self be true, like it's amazing advice. And it is. It's just kind of funny that in the context of Polonius, he doesn't believe it, right? Because he's sending spies, Reynaldo, to spy on his son, who he told that to. Well, here he says brevity is the soul of wit. So brevity means being brief, being short and to the point. The soul of wit means like the essence of quick-wittedness, of intellect in how you speak. If you have good wit, especially in Shakespeare's time, you win your arguments, people respect you more. And being a good orator and a good speaker was so important to the upper classes, right? Like you couldn't woo someone, if you were a man at least, you couldn't woo someone without composing a sonnet first. We see that Benedict being frustrated that he can't write a good sonnet for Beatrice in Much Ado. So it's a big deal to have good wit. And Polonius identifies that brevity is important, but he doesn't take his own advice. I will be brief. Your noble son is mad. Mad, call I it. For to define true madness, what is it but to be nothing else but mad? But let that go. So again, he's like, oh, let's talk about the definition of madness. More matter with less art, which is get to the point. Like get to the matter, the important stuff, with less flourishes of art. Madam, I swear I use no art at all. That he's mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity. And pity, 'tis true. A foolish figure, but farewell it, for I will use no art. Mad, let us grant him then. And now remains that we find out the cause of this effect, or rather say the cause of this defect, for this effect defective comes by cause. Thus it remains, and the remainder thus, perpend, I have a daughter, have while she is mine, who in her duty and obedience, mark, hath given me this. Now gather and surmise. It's such a funny, I love Polonius as a character. It's such a funny monologue. He gets in these tangents over and over and over again. a great example is like, oh, I'm using too much art here. Okay, so let me move on now. And I get hung up on the word, I'm saying I, like I'm playing Polonius. Polonius gets hung up on the word effect, like effect, or I guess it's a defect, like defect, not effect. Well, I'm getting confused. For this effect, effective comes by cause. It's just it's fun to say out loud because it's ridiculous. And then he says, I have a daughter, but he can't even leave that simple fact at it. He's like, well, I have her when she's like mine, like as she is my daughter right now. Like, would you still have a daughter even if she's like not in the house or grown up? Like, it's just funny. But anyway, he gives the letter to them that Hamlet wrote to Ophelia, because Ophelia gave this letter to her father. Now, why would she give a letter to her father from her boyfriend that she is not supposed to be with, but she wants to be with? Why would she do that? Why in the world? Because he's acting insane and she is worried for him, and she's turning to the person who she thinks might know why and could maybe help him. So you could already see the misunderstandings starting to compound toward even more misunderstandings and betrayal. So let's read the letter. He reads, to the celestial and my soul's idol, the most beautified Ophelia. Oh, that's an ill phrase, a vile phrase. Beautified is a vile phrase. He's like critiquing the description. But you shall hear thus, he reads, in her excellent white bosom, these, etc. Polonius, in reading the letter, says, etc., in order to indicate that he is skipping over the letter's formal compliments, which I think is very funny because bosom is your chest, your heart, but also your chest. So he's like, we're just going to skip over that stuff about my daughter. Came this from Hamlet to her? Good madam, stay a while. I will be faithful. He reads the letter again. Doubt though the stars are fire, doubt that the sun doth move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love. O dear Ophelia, I am ill at these numbers. I have not art to reckon my groans, but that I love thee best, O most best, believe it. Adieu. Thine evermore, most dear lady, whilst this machine is to him, Hamlet. So let's talk about that letter a little bit. First off, I do think it's hard to tell. Sometimes Shakespeare intentionally writes poorly or over the top, but he's so good at writing, it's like can still come off as beautiful. I do think that's some beautiful verse. A little much at the end, but especially those lines of doubting, I think are beautiful. And when you look at what they say, it says, doubt everything in the world, Ophelia, but never doubt that I love you. And then he says, I am ill at these numbers, unskilled at writing verses, is what that means. So he's switching to prose here, whereas instead of in poetry, where each line starts with a capital letter, it just looks like a paragraph on the page. He's switching to prose. I have not art to reckon my groans, so I can't explain rhythmically what I'm trying to say, but that I love thee best, O most best, believe it. And I am forever yours, while this machine is to him. Machine here means body. So until I'm dead, until my soul leaves my body, I am forever yours. And think about what that letter is saying. It says, doubt everything, but don't doubt that I love you. To me, it reads a little bit coded as I'm acting insane, but believe me, no matter what I do, I will always love you. It doesn't say I'm acting insane. If Hamlet had just told Ophelia, hey, I saw the ghost of my dad, I have to investigate, I'm going to cover it up by being insane, things might be clearer to her. She could have also said, that's too much. We're done. Which could have also, been better for her, maybe. But instead, I think he thinks he's telling her that everything's okay and just trust me, I will always love you. But his actions aren't really backing it up. And so she takes this letter to her father, who has forbid her from being with Hamlet. So what you'll notice Shakespeare is setting up here is a Romeo and Juliet situation, a star-crossed lover situation, where the families forbid each other from being together. Polonius and Laertes clearly tell Ophelia not to be with Hamlet. Later on in the play, Gertrude has some not so nice things to say about Ophelia, And even if they don't even realize they're together until this moment, they probably wouldn't think it very serious because she's not of the same royal class as he is. If Gertrude even cares enough to notice what's going on with Hamlet. So we get star-crossed lovers, we get Romeo and Juliet, and we get the miscommunication that is so tragic in Romeo and Juliet. And what's amazing to me, Shakespeare wrote R&J before he wrote Hamlet. What's amazing to me is he's taking this trope that he's, not necessarily created, but made very, very famous with his play. And he's using it again, but Romeo and Juliet in this instance, Hamlet and Ophelia, aren't even on stage together. Have you noticed that? Hamlet and Ophelia have not been on stage at the same time yet. Our star-crossed lovers, we haven't actually seen them together. And I think that's brilliant. It's like keeping the ghost from speaking until scene 5 of the play. He is ratcheting up the tension and the confusion and the intrigue of the play by delaying these things from happening. Whereas in most stories, they would happen right away. So anyway, let's get back to it. I'm being a little bit like Polonius here. This in obedience hath my daughter shown me, and more above hath his solicitings, as they fell out by time, by means and place, all given to mine ear. So she told me everything. But how hath she received his love? What do you think of me? No, she doesn't answer. What do you think of me? As of a man faithful and honorable. I would fain prove so. So fain meaning like I'm going to faithfully prove so. But what might you think when I had seen this hot love on the wing, as I perceive it? I must tell you that before my daughter told me, like I knew about this before she even told me. What might you, or my dear majesty or queen here, think if I had played the desk or the table book, or given my heart a winking, mute and dumb, or looked upon this love with idle sight? What might you think? So he's like, what would you think of me if I saw this happening and did nothing? I was a book. I basically laid my head down on a table and I just didn't do anything. What would you think of me? No, I went round to work. And my young mistress thus I did bespeak, Lord Hamlet is a prince. Out of thy star this must not be. And when I prescripts gave her that she should lock herself from his resort, admit no messengers, receive no tokens, which done, she took the fruits of my advice, and he, repelled a short tale to make, fell into a sadness, then into a fast, thence to a watch, thence to a weakness, thence to a lightness, and by this declension into the madness wherein now he raves, and all we mourn for. It's I love that monologue. So he's explained it now. He says, because she has listened to me and not, participated in his courtship, in this love between them, he fell into that long list of things, because it's Polonius. It has to be a long list, and that is why he is insane. The king to the queen. Do you think 'tis this? It may be very like. Hath there been such a time, I would fain know that I have positively said 'tis so, when it proved otherwise? Not that I know. Take this from this, if this be otherwise. So what he means is my head from my shoulders, if I'm wrong. He's like, have I ever been wrong? And they're like, I guess not. And he's like, if I'm wrong, behead me. That's how confident Polonius is. I will find where truth is hid, though it were hid indeed within the center, meaning center of the earth. How may we try it further? So how do we prove this? Sometimes he walks 4 hours, not four like F-O-R, F-O-U-R. He walks for 4 hours, apparently. Together here in the lobby. So he does indeed. At such a time, I'll loose my daughter to him. And then he just says to the king. So loose my daughter means send my daughter to him. Like, this madman who maybe is losing his mind because he's in love with my daughter and she's not responding to him. When he's walking around here, I'm just going to send my daughter to him. That crazy guy. It's quite a thing for Polonius to do. It's bait, right? He's turning Ophelia into bait. Be you and I behind an arras then. Mark the encounter. So an arras is a tapestry. It's a big, big curtain that goes all the way to the ground. So he's saying the king and him will go behind the tapestry. If he love her not, and be not from this reason fallen thereon, let me be no assistant for estate, but keep a farm and carters. So basically, I won't work for you anymore. I'll go be a farmer. So his plan, send his daughter to the crazy man, Hamlet, while him and the king pull like a Scooby-Doo hiding trick and go behind a tapestry to spy on what's happening. We will try it. Enter Hamlet reading a book. Famous stage direction because it's Hamlet and he's reading a book. But look where sadly the poor wretch comes reading. Away, I do beseech you both. Away, I'll board him presently. Oh, give me leave. So he wants the king and queen to leave so he can investigate alone. How does my good Lord Hamlet? Well, God a mercy. Do you know me, my lord? Excellent. Well, you are a fishmonger. Not I, my lord. Then I would you were so honest a man. Honest, my lord? I, sir, to be honest, as this world goes, is to be one man picked out of 10,000. That's very true, my lord. For if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion. Have you a daughter? So you'll see that Hamlet is responding with what seems to be his antic disposition. He calls him a fishmonger. He gets hung up on the word honest. Honest means both truthful. It also means chaste, like not promiscuous. So two meanings there. That becomes more important later. And then he says this thing about the sun breeding maggots in a dead dog. They believed back then that the sun would create maggots in a dead creature because they didn't quite understand how flies and maggots work. They just knew that if something dead was out in the sun, maggots would appear. So that's what he's referring to there. And then he kind of jumps to this, have you a daughter? I have, my lord. Let her not walk in the sun. Conception is a blessing, but as your daughter may conceive, friend, look to it. So notice what he just said, breeds maggots in the sun is a dead dog. And then he says, do you have a daughter? And Polonius says, I do. And Hamlet says, don't let her walk in the sun. Because, you know, women conceive things, and it's a blessing, right, to conceive a child if you want one. But then he says that after the thing about maggots and dead dogs. So he seems to be calling Ophelia, who is, of course, his girlfriend, a dead dog. But he's mad. He's insane, right? It's antic disposition. What better way to throw off Polonius than call your girlfriend a dead dog? I don't know. It's Hamlet, right? It's what he's saying. Polonius says to us as an aside, how say you by that? Still harping on my daughter. Yet he knew me not at first. He said I was a fishmonger. And he is far gone. And truly in my youth I suffered much extremity for love, very near this. So he's like, I know what he's going through. When I was young, I did the same thing happen to me. I'll speak to him again. What do you read, my lord? Words, 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 which is a famous line. What is the matter, my lord? Between who? I mean the matter that you read, my lord. Slanders, sir. For the satirical rogue says here that old men have gray beards, that their faces are wrinkled, their eyes purging thick amber and plum tree gum, and that they have a plentiful lack of wit, together with most weak hams. All which, sir, though I most powerfully and potently believe, yet I hold it not honesty to have it thus set down. For yourself, sir, shall grow old as I am, if like a crab you could go backward. So he says what he's reading is slander because it's describing old people. And it's describing them, I guess, accurately, but he says it's slander because it shouldn't be written down. And then he says Polonius will grow old like I am, if like a crab you go backward. And of course, Hamlet's a young man. Polonius is an older man. So if Polonius were to grow as old as Hamlet, it would be crab-like because crabs walk backwards, kind of. So that's what he's saying there, like a Benjamin Button sort of thing. So Polonius says an aside here, famous line. Imagine how many times I'm going to say that in this play, in this scene alone. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it, which is usually shortened to there's a method to the madness. And Polonius is a busybody, but he's not stupid. He meddles a lot, but he's not necessarily stupid. And he's kind of catching something here. Catching on to something here. He says there's a method to the madness. Yes, Hamlet is speaking insanity, but there's still a logic there. And what we can pick up on through dramatic irony is that, yes, there's a method to the madness. The madness, Hamlet's antic disposition, is to mask his actions so that he can investigate and move about freer in the court. He says back to Hamlet, will you walk out of the air, my lord? into my grave. Indeed, that's out of the air. Back to the audience. How pregnant sometimes his replies are. A happiness that often madness hits on, which reason and sanity could not so purposely be delivered of. I will leave him, and suddenly contrive the means of meeting between him and my daughter. My lord, I will take my leave of you. You cannot, sir, take from me anything that I will more willingly part with all, except my life, except my life, except my life. Fare you well, my lord. Hamlet, as an aside, these tedious old fools. So he picks up that Polonius is investigating him, which, should be pretty obvious because he investigates everyone. And then enter Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. You go to seek the Lord Hamlet. There he is. God save you, sir. Polonius exits. My honored lord, my most dear lord, my excellent good friends, how dost thou, Guildenstern? Ah, Rosencrantz, good lads, how do you both? As the indifferent children of the earth. Happy in that we are not over happy. On fortune's cap, we are not the very button. So you'll notice that Hamlet seems normal now. Like he sees his old friends and he seems to be talking in a normal way. In fact, he gets very informal. We've switched to prose here, which sometimes people mistakenly think prose in Shakespeare's characters of lower class. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are of lower class than Hamlet and Polonius and most of the characters we've seen so far, but Hamlet also switches to prose. So that's a misconception. That does not follow from all of Shakespeare's plays by any means. What prose is actually is when you are perhaps being less formal, which we see here, but oftentimes when there's an argument. If verses of the heart, proses of the mind, and when you're trying to figure something out. And there's no argument yet, but we're going to see some arguments happening. Arguments aren't always bad. Sometimes it's a battle of wit and just trying to outsmart each other in like a game. You see this a lot in Shakespeare's characters. But there's also the arguments of trying to prove something more central than that. And we'll see that here too. So let's see if we can look for that. Guildenstern says, on fortune's cap, we are not the very button, the very top. So if fortune is personified as a woman, it usually is in the folklore mythology, they are not at the top of the cap. So they're not having the greatest fortune ever. Hamlet says, neither the sole of her shoes, neither, my lord. So are you the sole of her shoes? No. So you're not having the greatest fortune ever. You're also not having the worst fortune ever. Hamlet then says, then you live about her waist or in the middle of her favors. Faith, her privates we. In the secret parts of fortune, oh, most true, she is a strumpet. What news? There's some dirty jokes about a personified fortune and them being in the middle. And what he means by privates is intimates, but obviously punning on private parts. None, my lord, but that the world's grown honest. Then is doomsday near, but your news is not true. Let me question more in particular. What have you, my good friends, deserved at the hands of fortune that she sends you to prison hither? So why were you sent to prison? Prison, my lord. Denmark's a prison. Then is the world one. So Hamlet says Denmark is a prison. And this is one of those lines where you can decide, is this antic disposition or is this true Hamlet? He's a prince, right? Seems a little silly that he would think the palace is a prison, but for him it is, right? He was not allowed to go back to Wittenberg. He's being watched at all times by Polonius, and his correspondence is being read behind his back, right? So it does seem like a prison, but it could also just be him acting insane, but also, there's a method to the madness. Then is the world one, a goodly one, in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons. Denmark being one of the worst. We think not so, my lord. Why then 'tis none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me it is a prison, another famous line, that it's not good things and bad things in the world, it's how you think about them. Why then your ambition makes it one. 'Tis too narrow for your mind. Oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space were it not that I have bad dreams, which dreams indeed are ambition. For the very substance of ambition is merely the shadow of a dream. A dream itself is but a shadow, truly, and I hold ambition of so airy and light quality that it is but a shadow's shadow. Then are our beggars bodies, and our monarchs and outstretched heroes the beggars' shadows. Shall we to the court, for by my favor I cannot reason. So that is a perfect example of prose and just this battle of wits. That's him and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern going back and forth. And you can see how they are latching onto the word in the previous line. Bad dreams, which dreams are ambition. Shadow of a dream is but a shadow. Truly I hold ambition of so airy like quality that it is but a shadow. So you can see them kind of trying to outdo each other word-wise. It's just an argument about whether or not Hamlet's life is as bad as he says it is. They say, oh, your mind is so big and you're so full of great ideas and wants and needs that anywhere would seem like a prison, even a palace to you. Okay, but now they're changing the subject. Shall we to the court, for by my fair I cannot reason. We'll wait upon you. Oh, no such matter. I will not sort you with the rest of my servants, for to speak to you like an honest man, I am most dreadfully attended. But in the beaten way of friendship, what make you at Elsinore? To visit you, my lord, no other occasion. Beggar that I am even poor in thanks, but I thank you. And sure, dear friends, my thanks are too dear a halfpenny. Were you not sent for? Is it your own inclining? Is it a free visitation? Come, deal justly with me. Come, nay, speak. What should we say, my lord? Anything but to the purpose. You were sent for, and there's a kind of confession in your looks, which your modesties have not craft enough to color. I know the good king and queen have sent for you. To what end, my lord? That you must teach me. So there we see a shift in the conversation. Hamlet almost opens up to them and says, I have to be honest with you. But then he thinks it through, because he says, you are my friends, you're not servants. So same sort of language he uses around Horatio when Horatio first shows up. But he doesn't open up to them like he did Horatio. He begins to talk about himself honestly, or say he will. But then he says, were you sent for? And if you look at, this is like line 295-ish in the Folger. He asks them that basically same question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He asks it 3 times and then says to them, speak twice. So you can imagine how that plays out on stage. Hamlet asks the question, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern don't respond. He follows up, they don't respond. He follows up, they don't respond. He urges them, they don't respond. He urges them. All they can say is, what should we say, my lord? And he's like, answer it. And then he says, no, you were sent for. And you're too stupid, right? That's what he means when he says, your modesties have not craft enough to color, meaning the modesties of your intellect are not smart enough to cover up how you actually are responding. So you're too stupid to trick me. You were sent for by the king and queen. So now Hamlet has very good reason to think that they are there to spy on him, because the king and queen sent him. Maybe not spy. Maybe he doesn't think spy on him yet, but at least he is suspicious of them. To what end, my lord? That you must teach me, but let me conjure you by the rights of our fellowship, by the constancy of our youth, by the obligation of our ever persevered love, and by what more dear a better proposer can charge you withal, be even and direct with me, whether you were sent for or no. So he when he says conjure them, he means like call upon their honesty, and he gives a long list of things, by the fact that they've been friends since they were kids, by, and all this sort of stuff, that they have this love for each other. Like, please be honest with me. And Rosencrantz just says to Guildenstern, what say you? Hamlet says, nay, then I have an eye of you. If you love me, hold not off. My lord, we were sent for. And then they're honest with him. They say we were sent for. So that's something, at least. Hamlet says, I will tell you why. So shall my anticipation prevent your discovery, and your secrecy to the king and queen moult no feather. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth like happiness. Foregone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air, So the earth is a sterile promontory, like nothing lives there. And then he says, this most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave overhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, the sun. Why it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. So the earth is sterile and the air is deadly. It's contagious. It's disease. I'm going to finish my water trying to get through this scene. What a piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Whew! He talks about how amazing humans are. They're like the greatest thing God created. They're the paragon, like the top of creation itself. And yet, what is a man? It could appear that we are gods ourselves, but actually we are the quintessence of dust. Quintessence means the quintessential thing. And it also, let me see, I have a note here to help me out. Very essence. And it's usually describing something that transcends the four earthly essences, but here it is used ironically to describe mankind as the essence of dust. So the four earthly essences are like water, air, fire, dirt. I don't know. I think it's the Avatar, the last Airbender stuff. But what they believe everything was made up of back then. And what he says is, all man is dust. If we're the best, if we're the transcension of anything, we're not angels, we're not gods, we're just dust, right? Like in the Bible, it says, they were made of dust, and from dust you came and dust you shall return, right? Like funeral rites. Man delights not me. No, nor women neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. This passage, which is in prose, and I feel is just very honest and truthful. Like, I don't think this is antic disposition. I think this is Hamlet, because they were a little honest with him. He's being honest with them. He's describing depression. He's talking about how the world is beautiful, but not to him anymore. And being a human doesn't feel like a blessing. And that other people don't bring him joy. And look at how they respond. He says, man delights not me. No, nor women neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. It's almost like they're laughing at like, he's not delighted by men. And he's like, I was using it as like all people, not just men. Like they are not intelligent enough or good enough listeners or care enough to follow Hamlet's language there. Like they're laughing at like a silly, stupid joke that they're thinking of instead of responding with what Hamlet's explaining. My lord, there was no such stuff in my thoughts. Why did you laugh then when I said man delights not me? To think, my lord, if you delight not in man, what Lenten entertainment the players shall receive from you. We caught them on the way, and hither are they coming to offer you service. So the players are actors, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern run into actors on the way to Elsinore, and they invite them, like a traveling group of actors, they invite them to put on a show. Maybe cheer up Hamlet with a show. He that plays the king shall be welcome. His majesty shall have tribute on me. The adventurous knight shall use his foil and target. The lover shall not sith gratis. The humorous man shall end his part in peace. The clown shall make those laugh whose lungs are tickle in the seer. And the lady shall say her mind freely, or the blank verse shall halt for it. What players are they? Even those you were wont to take such delight in, the tragedians of the city. So it seems to imply that Hamlet has seen them perform before. How chances if they travel, their residence, both in reputation and profit, was better both ways. I think their inhibition comes by the means of the late innovation. Do they hold the same estimation they did when I was in the city? Are they so followed? No, indeed, are they not? How comes it? Do they grow rusty? Nay, their endeavor keeps up in wanton peace. wanton pace. But there is, sir, an aerie of children, little Iases that cry out at the top of the question and are most tyrannically clapped for it. These are now the fashion, and so berattle the common stages, so they call them, that many wearing rapiers are afraid of goose quills and dare scarce come thither. What are they, children? Who maintains them? How are they escouted? Will they pursue the quality no longer than they can sing? Will they not say afterwards, if they should grow themselves to common players, as it is most like, if their means are no better, their writers do them wrong to make them exclaim against their own succession? Faith, there has been much to do on both sides, and the nation holds it a sin to tar them to controversy. There was, for a while, no money bid for argument unless the poet and the player went to cuffs in the question. How is it possible? Oh, there has been much throwing about of brains. Do the boys carry it away? Aye, that they do, my lord. Hercules and his load, too. It is not very strange, for my uncle is king of Denmark, and those that would make mouths at him while my father lived give 20, 40, 50, 100 ducats apiece for this picture in little. So blood, there is something in this more than natural if philosophy can find it out. So I went through that part pretty quickly because honestly, it's not that important for the play. Basically, it's interesting if you're like interested in the history of Jacobean theater, but because Hamlet's talking about how he feels different roles should be performed. But basically, this group of actors were really successful in the city where Hamlet saw them, but now they're traveling, and Hamlet's like, why are they bad now? They were making more money in the city. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern explained that they had to leave the city and seek out other places to perform to boost their revenue because their main competition is all these kids doing plays. And Hamlet's like, what the heck? Who like watches them? Like, that's ridiculous. Or what are they going to do when they grow up and their voices drop? Like what? And all of this, I believe, is based on, and I think it was Ben Jonson who started to do some like masks. Ben Jonson was like Shakespeare's main rival of a playwright when they were both alive in London. I think he was writing masks that involved children, and Shakespeare seems to be saying that's stupid. Like, I guess there's no real art or whatever. And, you know, in Hamlet / Shakespeare's defense, those of us who do theater know that some theaters operate by putting as many children on stage as possible and making them all sell a bunch of tickets to their relatives. And they barely say a line or get to do anything, but they sell out the house every single night, which is fine if it's good for the kids. But there's a lot of money in children's theater for sure. So that seems to be what Hamlet is griping about. But like I said, it's not that important. And it's a very long scene. So let's move on to where things do get important. The players enter. There are the players. Gentlemen, you are welcome to Elsinore. Your hands come then. The appurtenance of the appurtenance of a welcome is fashion and ceremony. Let me comply you with this garb, lest my extent to the players, which I tell you must show fairly outwards, should more appear like entertainment than yours. You are welcome, but my uncle father and aunt mother are deceived, which is a very funny thing to say, uncle father and aunt mother. In what, my dear lord? I am but mad north-northwest when the wind is southerly. I know a hawk from a handsaw, which is a proverb that means you can tell two things apart that aren't that similar to each other. Seems like a weird boast, but Hamlet can do it. Enter Polonius. Well be with you, gentlemen. Hark you, Guildenstern, and you too, at each ear a hearer, which I think means go on either side of him. That great baby you see there is not yet out of his swaddling clouts. Happily, he is the second time come to them, for they say an old man is twice a child. I will prophesy he comes to tell me of the players' market. So he says he's a big baby, and they're like, yeah, they say old people are like babies again. He says, I prophesy, meaning, look at this, he's going to tell me that the players have arrived. You say right, sir, a Monday morning, 'twas then indeed. My lord, I have news to tell you. My lord, I have news to tell you. When Roscius was an actor in Rome, the actors are come hither, my lord. Buzz, buzz, upon my honor. Then came each actor on his ass. So the buzz, buzz is like, told you, got it correct. Told you he was going to tell me the players are here. The best actors in the world, either for tragedy, comedy, history, pastoral, pastoral comical, historical pastoral, tragical historical, tragical comical, historical pastoral, scene individable, or poem unlimited. Seneca cannot be too heavy, nor Plautus too light. For the law of writ and liberty, these are the only men. That is so funny to me that Polonius goes through the four main genres of plays: comedy, tragedy, history, and pastoral. And then he starts combining all of them together, like a dark comedy, we might say, or something like that, or a dramedy, like a drama and a comedy. He's like putting them all together and says they can do anything. They can play Seneca, who wrote Latin tragedies, or Plautus, who wrote Latin comedies. Shakespeare owes quite a bit to Plautus, actually. And he says they're great actors. Hamlet responds, "O Jephthah, judge of Israel, what a treasure hast thou? What a treasure had he, my lord?" So he calls him this judge from the Bible, right? The book of Judges, Jephthah. "Why, one fair daughter and no more, the which he loved passing well." That's quoting the Bible there. "Aside still on my daughter. Am I not in the right, old Jephthah? If you call me Jephthah, my lord, I have a daughter that I love passing well. Nay, that follows not. What follows then, my lord? Why, as by lot God wot, and then, it came to pass as most like it was. The first row of the pious chanson will show you more, for look where my abridgment comes." So what we see there is he calls him this character from the Bible, and that character famously has a daughter. Jephthah has a daughter. And Polonius is like, he's still talking to my daughter. I was right. He's mad because of Ophelia. But what Hamlet says is, oh, no, you're not following the verse properly. That's not what happens. And Polonius is like, what happens? And he explains it a little bit more. And if you know your Bible well enough, you know that this person in the Bible, Jephthah, promised, if he was going to be victorious, he promised God he would sacrifice the first thing he saw on his way back from the battle. And he wins the battle, and he thinks his dog, being, fast, will get to him first, and he'll have to sacrifice his dog. Very sad, but it'll be worth it to win this battle. And actually his daughter gets there before the dog, and he has to sacrifice his daughter. So what Hamlet is inferring here is that Polonius is acting like this guy who let his own career advancement and need for glory and proving himself lead to the death of the most beloved person in the world to him, his daughter. Which seems to definitely implies that Hamlet knows Polonius is using Ophelia as bait. But here come the players. "You are welcome, masters, welcome all. I am glad to see thee well. Welcome, good friends. Oh, my old friend, why thy face is valanced since I saw thee last. Comest thou to beard me in Denmark? What, my young lady, mistress, by the lady, your ladyship is nearer to heaven than when I saw you last, meaning older. By the amplitude of a chopine, pray God your voice, like a piece of uncurrent gold, be not cracked within the ring." So he's like, you've gotten kind of old to play a woman, because, right, men would have been playing women on stage in England back then. So he's like, you've gotten kind of old to play a woman. I hope you don't sound like a man. Okay. "Masters, you are all welcome. Well, even to the French falconers fly at anything we see. We'll have a speech straight. Come, give us a taste of your quality. Come, a passionate speech." So he calls for a monologue, right away, a speech. The player says, "What speech, my good lord? I heard thee speak a speech once, but it was never acted, or if it was, not above once. For the play I remember pleased not the million. 'Twas Cavary to the general." Cavary? What does that mean? I thought I understood this part very well. 460. Like caviar. Okay. So it was too exotic for average taste. So he's like, I heard you do this speech once, but maybe you never performed it. It was too artsy. It's too exotic for the average, the millions, as he says. But it was, as I received it, and others whose judgment in such matters cried to the top of mine, an excellent play, well digested in the scene, set down with as much modesty as cunning. So he's like, I could appreciate it, right? Hamlet here would have been very proud of his top 5 letterbox films, I'm sure. I remember one said there were no salients in the lines to make the matter savory, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict the author of affection, but called it an honest method. as wholesome, as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. One speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas's tale to Dido, and thereabout of it, especially when he speaks of Priam's slaughter. So he's remembering the speech. And you have to know your ancient Roman literature to get where he's getting at here with the speech. So this is a scene from the Aeneid by Virgil. And the Aeneid is all about Aeneas, who is a Trojan. And if you know your ancient Greek literature, you know in the Iliad how there's this big war between the Greeks and the Trojans. And, well, this part's not in the Iliad. Right after the Iliad, the fall of Troy happens because of the Trojan horse, and Troy is destroyed. Totally burned down, mass slaughter, terrible stuff. And if you read the Iliad, which you should, amazing book, poem, if you read the Iliad, you side with the Trojans perhaps even more than the Greeks, even though it's a Greek tale from Homer. The Trojans are really depicted as very brave and defending their homeland. And maybe they started it, but it was really just this one prince, and now everyone else has been dragged into it. And Priam is the king of Troy. Okay, so this is about Priam's slaughter. Aeneas is not, I don't think he's in the Iliad. I think he's Virgil's invention. But basically, he's a Trojan who I think bears his father on his back and escapes the fall of Troy, the burning of this city. And he goes on a quest to become the founder of Rome. So this is like a new take on the creation of Rome. We have the Romulus and Remus myth about the two children who are raised by the she-wolf. This is a different take that Virgil has on how Rome was created, which is that Aeneas survives Troy, so he's linked to the Trojans, this other great historical society that the Romans would have looked up to. He escapes that, goes on this quest, and eventually becomes the founder of Rome. Before he gets there, he runs into Dido, the queen of Carthage, another historical enemy for the Romans, and he tells this story to Dido, eventually leaving her because his duty to his country is more than his duty to his love or to a woman. So anyway, there's a lot with the Aeneid. Maybe I'll do a video on it one day. But you have to have that backstory to understand what he's getting at here. So this is about the fall of Troy and Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see, let me see. So he's remembering the line, and he says, the rugged Pyrrhus, or Pyrrhus is, I think, how you say it. This is the son of Achilles, who is a Greek warrior, the most famous Greek warrior in the Iliad. But he famously dies in the Trojan War when Paris, a Trojan prince, shoots him in the heel with an arrow. The rugged Pyrrhus, like a hyrricane beast, that's a part of, I think, modern day Iran. Yes. Yeah. That was known for its tigers back then. So that means a tiger. 'Tis not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the knight resemble when he lay couched in the ominous horse, or in the Trojan horse, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot now is he total goals, horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and empasted with the parching streets that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their lord's murder. Roasted in wrath and fire, and thus o'ersized with coagulate gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus old grandsire Priam seeks. So proceed you. I'm not going to get into the meter of what's being delivered there, but it is like got a kick to it. Hopefully I demonstrated it well. I'm very sorry, almost 500 straight lines of Hamlet playing all the characters is a little exhausting. But it has a real kick to it. Like there's this drive, and basically we're in the Trojan horse where we're following this character Pyrrhus, who has got the death of his father and the people that he loves who have been killed by the Trojans. And it is driven in war, right? Not murder, but killed by them. It has driven him to a rage. And he just can't wait to get out of the Trojan horse and kill every Trojan that he sees, especially the king himself. That is his goal. We get some really like intense imagery, like the coagulate gore and eyes like carbuncles. Coagulate is like, you know, welling up like blood, and carbuncles are really bright jewels. So then he says, so proceed you. So he's saying to the player, now you take over. Polonius says, for God, my lord, well spoken with good accent and good discretion. Polonius is like, that was pretty good, Hamlet. Like forgets he's spying on him for a little bit, just compliments him. The first player says, anon he finds him, so Pyrrhus, finds him, striking too short at Greeks, his antique sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal matched Pyrrhus at Priam drives, in rage strikes wide, but the whiff and wind of his fell sword the unnerved father falls. Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus's ear. So basically he finds Priam. We've jumped ahead. He finds Priam and he strikes with his sword and he misses Priam. Now Priam's an old man, the king of Troy. He's such a good character. Oh my gosh. Like anyone watching this who knows their ancient texts is like not wanting to see this old man murdered. He's not a dictator who's like horrible. He's a good king throughout the ancient world and the tales of him. So this kid who feels this old man is responsible for the death of his father because he represents Troy, Ilium. It says Ilium falls. Ilium, another word for Troy, the Iliad, Ilium. He strikes at him. He misses, but the wind from the sword makes Priam fall. And with him, Troy itself falls. But then he doesn't strike him. He freezes. Pyrrhus freezes for a second. And he says, because there's a scream and it takes prisoner Pyrrhus's ear. So it steals his attention. For lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of Reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So his sword is up like this, about to drive, but he hears this scream and it sticks in the air. He can't follow through. So, as a painted tyrant, Pyrrhus stood. He looks like a painting. And like a neutral to his will and matter, did nothing. But as we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack stands still, the bold wind speechless, and the orb below is hushes death. Anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region. So after Pyrrhus's pause, aroused vengeance sets him new a work. So there's like thunder that happens or a sound, and it clicks, it makes him click back into realizing what he was doing. And it tells us he starts attacking Priam. And never did the Cyclops hammers, so they were famous forgers like blacksmiths who made the lightning bolts for Zeus, the Cyclops, very, very strong, right? Hit the hammer very hard. And never did Cyclops' hammers fall on Mars's armor, forged for proof eternity, with less remorse than Pyrrhus's bleeding sword now falls on Priam. So he kills him. Out, thou strumpet Fortune, Fortune being personified again, right? Talked about her. All you gods and general synod, take away her power, break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round nave down the hill of heaven as low as to the fiends. So the speaker here of this poem, with the death of the king, who no one wanted to see die, rails against Fortune, which we could interpret as destiny, the will of the gods, luck, whatever you want to see it as, your horoscope, basically the forces that make things happen. And Fortune was often personified as a woman at a wheel, like a sewing wheel or weaving wheel. So it's saying break her wheel and roll her down a hill, because this man shouldn't have died. It's a tragedy, right? It's a tragedy. Go figure. Polonius says, this is too long. You know what, Polonius? As somebody who's very tired, I agree with you, but it's a really ironic thing and a hypocritical thing for you to be the one to say that. Hamlet does not like that the guy was interrupted. He says, it shall to the barbers with your beard. So he's like, I'm going to have your beard cut off. Prithee, say on. This is back to the actor. He's for a jig, he being Polonius. He's for a jig or a tale of body, or he sleeps. Like, say on, come to Hecuba. So he's like, that guy can't pay attention to good art. get to the part about Hecuba. Now, Hecuba is Priam, the king of Troy, who we just saw slaughtered. Hecuba is Priam's wife. First player says, but who woe had seen the Moblid queen? The Moblid queen? Like, he's like, wait, are you sure that's the description? That's good. Moblid queen is good. So Polonius said, no, I like that part. Let's go on with it. Run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison ream, a clout upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all over-teamed loins a blanket, and the alarm of fear caught up. Who this had seen with tongue in venom steeped, gainst fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven and passion in the gods. So basically, Hecuba's scream and cry when she sees what's happened to her husband. If the gods can be moved at all by human emotion, that would move them. That they would pity her. The gods who historically in ancient texts don't give a darn about what the mortals are actually doing most of the time. They're too busy cheating on each other and trying to steal stuff. That they would care. That they would care what was happening. Polonius says, look where'er he has come. Oh my goodness. Look where'er he has not turned his color and his tears in his eye. Prithee no more. So he's talking about the actor, that the actor is weeping, envisioning and performing this monologue. 'Tis well. I'll have thee speak out the rest of this soon. Good my lord, will you see the players well bestowed? Do you hear? Let them be well used, for they are the abstract and brief chronicles of the time. After your death, you are better to have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live. So that's a very often cited line about Shakespeare talking about actors, that take good care of actors. And actors were not seen as like Hollywood stars like we see them nowadays. They were not celebrities. They were not incredibly wealthy. It was not thought of as a high-class profession. Not that they weren't respected for their art, but it wasn't like they were made bajillionaires for it, right? But what Shakespeare says here is take good care of actors, because it'd be better to have an insulting thing written on your grave when you're dead than to have an actor not like you when you're alive, because of what they can perform about you, right? That there's power in acting. My lord, I will use them according to their desert. God's bodykins, man, much better. Use every man after his desert. And who shall scape whipping? Use them after your own honor and dignity. The less they deserve, the more merit is in your bounty. Take them in. Come, sirs. Follow him, friends. We'll hear a play tomorrow. As Polonius and the players exit, Hamlet speaks to the first player, the one who is performing that speech. And he says, dost thou hear me, old friend? Can you play the murder of Gonzago? So he's asking him if he can perform a play, the murder of Gonzago. Aye, my lord. We'll have it tomorrow night. You could, for a need, study a speech of some 12 or 16 lines, which I would set down and insert in it, could you not? Aye, my lord. So he's like, if I gave you like 12 to 16 lines to add to that play, could you memorize it in a night to perform it? And he says, yeah. And the actors could have done that. When they were on tour, like repertoire theater, they would have been performing a bunch of plays. So we know from historical records that when they went on, Shakespeare's actors went on tour, the King's Men, Lord Chamberlain's men, depending on what time period. One person might have been playing Hamlet in this play, and Orlando in As You Like It, and Benvolio and Romeo and Juliet. Like, they took a bunch of plays with them. So they were very good at memorizing. So it's very believable this guy would learn 12 to 16 lines, which isn't that much, but he could learn it in a night. We would have a harder time doing that, most modern humans, because we don't memorize as much as we used to. Anyway, but more interesting is why is Hamlet having him do this play, and why is he adding lines to it? You'll find out. Aye, my lord. Very well. Follow that lord, and look you mock him not. My good friends, I'll leave you till night. So this is to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. You are welcome to Elsinore. Good, my lord. Aye, so goodbye to you. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern exit. Hamlet is alone on stage. We get soliloquy number 2. So I've said earlier that the play Hamlet is made up of 6 big soliloquies. This is the second one. The first one was, oh, this too sullied flesh would melt. This is, now that I'm alone, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave. So Hamlet alone on stage can talk to us and share his actual feelings. Antic disposition can drop away, and he can tell us how he actually feels at this moment. He says, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. It is not, butchering Hamlet. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage waned, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing? For Hecuba? So what he's saying is, isn't it not incredible that the actor that we just saw can cry and show on his face and hear the breaking of his voice, all of this emotion for nothing, for Hecuba? It's a story for Hecuba. He doesn't know Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? So what is Hamlet's motive and cue for passion? The murder of his father. So what would this actor do if he had that to perform? Not a story he's making up, but an actual tragedy that he's talking about. He would drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears. That's what he would do, drown the stage with tears. Notice he said he would make the guilty, what is it exactly? Found the ignorant, amaze, make mad the guilty and appall the free, right? He would drive them to insanity, which is interesting. They would do something to guilty people. Think about that in a little bit here. Yet I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, peak like a John of Dreams, which is an absent-minded dreamer, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. No, not for a king upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who calls me villain, breaks my pat across, plucks off my beard and blows it in my face, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the lie in the throat as deep as to the lungs. Who does me this? Ha, swoons, I should take it. For it cannot be, but I am pigeon-livered and lap gall to make the oppression bitter. Or ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites with this slave's offal. Bloody body villain, remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain. And all of that is about himself. Oh, vengeance. Why, what an ass am I? Well, we'll pause here and talk about this a little bit before I go on. All of that is about himself, because he does not feel the same emotion right now for his dead father that this actor felt for a story, for Hecuba, a fictitious or ancient person that he doesn't personally know. And this is something people talk about in grief, the guilt that comes with not grieving. We know Hamlet is grieving the death of his father, but when grief starts to change, and it never goes away, I think it just changes. When grief starts to change, guilt can accompany it. And we see this with Hamlet. When he talked about that quintessence of dust, that depression that he described to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he does not like himself right now. He says that his offal, his body, should fatten kites, birds, like vultures. That if he can't feel what this actor could feel, if he can't even grieve his father anymore, that he should just be dead and fill up the guts of birds of prey. He says, "Oh, vengeance, why, what an ass am I. This is most brave that I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab, a scullion, fie upon it, foe about my brains." Scullion is a kitchen servant, drab is a prostitute. So he's just very, very mean things to say about other people, but he says, I'm a prince. I should have so much cause for passion, so much cause for action. Why am I not doing anything? And yet, you know, I'm not doing anything. I'm worse than the people in society that people see as the worst of the worst. But then the monologue changes. He gets an idea. I don't know if he had this idea earlier because he already talked to the murderer about adding some lines in. Maybe it just hasn't fully percolated enough for him to say it until now. But we'll see that Hamlet is changing gears. He says, I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have, by the very cunning of the scene, been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. I have heard that people watching a play have been so moved it's caused them to confess the bad thing that they did. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tent him to the quick. If he do blench, I know my course. The spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape, yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. So what he says at the end, if you didn't catch it, is that he's going to perform a play, or these players are going to perform a play. He's going to write some changes to it. He's going to perform a play that resembles his father's death, perform it in front of his uncle. Now, remember, his father died in a very particular way, poisoning through the ear. So he's going to play that on stage and see how his uncle reacts. And if his uncle has a tell, shows, blinks, whatever you want to say, if he shows guilt, then Hamlet will know how to proceed. That he'll have to kill him. That the play's the thing to catch, to show the conscience of the king. Now, why does Hamlet need this proof? It says in there that the spirit, that his father, who came to him, could have been a good spirit, but it could have also been from the devil. And that the devil has the power to create a pleasing shape, to change. It's a shapeshifter, the devil. Can appear as something that it is not in order to trick us and damn us. So Hamlet he has a hypothesis, and he's doing the scientific method. His hypothesis is that my uncle killed my father, but now I need to test that hypothesis through experiment. And the experiment is the play. And then he will watch the play performed. Well, he'll watch his uncle watch the play, and then he'll know how to proceed. So one way to play this is Hamlet is incredibly careful. He doesn't want to be tricked. He doesn't want to do the wrong thing. He doesn't want to rush into murdering his uncle to get revenge if it's not just. The other way is that he's stalling. You could play it that way too. And who would blame him, right? Who wouldn't want to be sure before doing something serious, whatever it is in life, let alone something as irreversible as what Hamlet feels he must do to Claudius. So that is the end of Act 2. It sets up the next big action of the play, which is the play within the play. But there's some other really incredible stuff that happens before then. So hopefully that all made sense. I know that was incredibly long live stream. But while I have you here, if you, as a fellow Shakespeare scholar, if you're watching all of this and this into Hamlet, there's a video down in the description below that links a couple books that I think are really great about Shakespeare that are underrated, that if you want to dive more into Shakespeare in general, not just Hamlet, I highly recommend them to everyone. And I have a few of them here just to give you a little preview. This is Illustrating Shakespeare, which is this awesome history of different paintings of Shakespeare throughout the world and going all the way back to basically when his plays were performed. So that's a really cool resource. And also in the visual art realm, Presenting Shakespeare is a collection of Shakespeare posters that are divided by play and by country. So it's really cool to see how different countries have put together different takes on Shakespeare's plays throughout the centuries that they've been performed. So that's just 2 of the books that are talked about in that video. So if you're interested in that video, link in the description. As always, there's a link for 10% off your first order of field notes. Helps out the channel, gets you some great notebooks at a discount. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in Act 3. Happy reading.